violence is on the rise here in the Lowcountry. Today, I talk one-on-one with Merrill Chapman, the South Carolina president of the Brady Campaign to prevent gun violence, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Merrill Chapman, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. I really appreciate the time.
Oh, you're very welcome. You are the president of the South Carolina chapter of the Brady Campaign, which obviously prevents gun violence here in the United States. Tell me, what's new, what's now with the organization?
Well, we're really excited about what the Senate and the House are doing. We think it's a good framework for the future. We'd like to see assault weapons banned, and we would like to see all background checks on all guns sold. We think that's essential to keep Americans safe.
What should be the framework right now?
Well, the framework right now is more mental health resource. They're giving resources to schools and mental health in schools. They're keeping dangerous people and people who are suicidal from having guns. So that's going to save lives. Not as many lives as we'd like to save, but it will save lives.
Where exactly are the mental health resources for people here in South Carolina?
Well, that's going to come from the feds. The feds will send us the money for that.
How much money are you expecting to come to, say, Charleston?
That's a good question. I don't think they have judged that out yet.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Merrill. How many of those suicidal people in South Carolina actually have access to guns?
Well, suicide is an interesting thing, especially with the gun, because it's often a momentary thought. And with the gun, that usually makes it a permanent situation. If you have pills or do something else, 911 can come into the picture and you can be helped. But with a gun, you're dead. So keeping guns out of the hands of people who are suicidal saves more lives than we can imagine. We lose 111 lives a day to gun violence, to guns. When I started doing this, it was 92, and that wasn't that long ago. So it's gone up exponentially, and gun sales have gone up just amazing. We see it in our city, our state, and across the country.
Well, what is the current number of injuries in the state due to gun violence?
The CDC doesn't have a head, and it has been unfunded, so they're not keeping track of those numbers.
Well, let me ask you this, Merrill. What share of South Carolina gun deaths are actually murders, and what share is actually a portion of suicides?
Well, a better answer for you will be that we're number 4 in the country for gun violence, and we're number 5 in the country for massacres. That's a huge deal. And we at Brady, I've been talking to the team, right, and we at Brady are going to be pouring more resources into the state due to that.
What resources are you looking at right now?
Well, right now, we're South Carolina, and we have a conservative leadership, so we don't get a lot done. But with the numbers being that high, more money will come in from Brady. More resources as in training, more people come in, that sort of thing.
Well, how much money do you have right now in your budget to train these people?
Oh, Quintin, what a question. We're a nonprofit, and we have very limited funds for training.
Now, what type of training would be ideal right now, Merrill?
I think recruitment training would be ideal right now to get as many people involved as possible. And then I would like to see, there's a program in Chicago that works very well, and it is taking the entire person into view and helping them financially, spiritually, educationally, the whole shebang, and keeping that person off the street and out of the gangs and all of that, because we're seeing a lot of gang violence in Charleston. So,
exactly is the gang violence around here in this town?
Well, it's on the east side. We see that all the time. My chapter leader in Charleston lives on the east side, and I'm calling her every 2 weeks to make sure she and her family are okay because there's a shooting.
Now, what shootings have been taking place on the east side recently?
Well, I mean, we just had a shooting where accidentally, I think it was a 7-year-old was shot in his home. We're having shootings all the time on the east side, but we're having shootings all over the city. West Ashley's gone up in numbers too. It used to be that North Charleston was equivalent, per capita to Chicago. And now West Ashley's become the big number. They're going up so high in gun violence.
When did they go high up in violence?
Say that again, Quintin?
Yeah, when did they go up, West Ashley, in their high percentage of gun violence?
During COVID.
Now, going back to the east side, how many shootings take place over there over the past week or so? Every week, I should say.
It's about every day.
Now, Merrill, let me make it abundantly clear for the viewers out here. I am a resident of the east side. Where exactly are these shootings taking place on the east side?
Well, we've had shootings right off of America.
You mean South Street?
Yes. So, that Morrison, the streets that are right off Morrison Drive.
Oh, you mean East Bay?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, farther up East Bay is Morrison. So, yes.
Now, how many of those shootings are taking place with teenagers, and how many of those shootings are with adults?
Mostly teenagers.
What's the age bracket?
I would say you're looking at 13 to 18. You're looking at young people.
And that brings me to my next question. For teens, say 12 to 17, what number of them have actually been killed or injured by gun violence?
I don't have that number, but I do know that number can be reduced. When we look at when we look at them as a person that needs the infrastructure to move out of that system and into a system where they have self-esteem and worth, and they're cared for. They're pulled up. They're taught to fish.
Current private and public partnerships do you want to have for that type of infrastructure, say on the east side?
Say that again?
What current public and private partnership would you develop for that type of infrastructure, say on the east side?
Well, MUSC has some good programs. The College of Charleston has a good program. So I think that partnering with them would be a great help.
Why hasn't that been done, recently?
I think they're pretty new programs over there. Brady is nationally the oldest gun violence prevention group in the state, in the country. And so we're looking at partnering with anybody that's doing this work.
Who else is doing this work in the state of South Carolina?
You've got all kinds of groups. You've got Moms Demand Action. You have smaller groups, people that have lost loved ones have started their own small groups. And there are numerous, too many to mention.
Now, going back to demographics, obviously, Merrill, for the age of 0 to 11, what number of children have actually been injured or killed by gun violence here in this state?
In this state?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you talking daily, yearly, monthly, what?
Oh, yes, daily, monthly, and yearly. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not that great with numbers, but I would say that there are 17 that get killed every day in this country.
But how about this state?
Well, we're part of the country, so the numbers work into our state too.
Okay, well, in the state, Merrill, what demographic is disproportionately impacted by, say, firearm homicide?
Well, we are seeing more of that in the Black and brown community.
Where exactly here in Charleston besides the east side, West Ashley, and North Charleston?
I think you've just named it, though. The east side, West Ashley, and North Charleston.
Okay.
You're looking for something else, and I'm not saying it right, I think.
Oh, no worries. It's all good. Let me ask you this, then. What's the percentage of unintentional shootings in South Carolina?
We have numerous unintentional shootings. We just had a mom that was shot in the back by a young child that was sitting in the back seat.
Mm.
So we have shootings all the time by children who get guns. And one of the things that Brady would like to see is that the parents get held accountable for having loose guns. Another one was a shooting with a child who shot their father and he died. The gun was in a bag on the floor, and it was a 2-year-old that shot the father. The mom was in the kitchen cooking dinner.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Well, but then how many of those loose guns are in the possession of these children?
It's easy. Children, if children can find their Christmas presents, and they do, they can find the guns.
Hmm.
And most people think that having a gun to be safe means it needs to be nearby and loaded. And it actually makes you less safe. Suicide rates are higher with guns in the house. Homicide rates are higher if you have guns in a house. Doesn't keep you safer. I mean, that's just proven.
And locally, where can you prove that as far as suicide rates in Charleston County?
Well, I mean, the numbers are showing that. Statewide, the sheriff has the numbers that show that the numbers of suicide rates and gun violence rates in the state. And as you know, during COVID, and we're still in COVID, by the way, but I know that there has been an unprecedented amount of, say, for instance, increases in gun sales due to COVID. What are those increases here in the Lowcountry? It's really crazy. They're selling out of guns. They can't keep guns stocked. I think that people during COVID get uncomfortable because their rules and regulations are put on us, and we're individualistic. We're not used to that happening in our country. And during COVID, gun sales went up so much, and while other stores were closed for safety, gun stores were seen as were liquor stores as essential. I don't understand that, but I think the gun lobby has a big hand in that. But gun sales went up across the country, and we saw it in the Lowcountry too.
Now, say for instance, and I know obviously you're nonprofit, a president, you cannot really, have a say in all of this, but let's say hypothetically, if you were in the state of South Carolina House of Representatives or the South Carolina Senate, what bill would you put forth to make sure that gun stores are actually closed and be non-essential?
Well, I would do just that. I would have a bill. I would make sure it was bipartisan bill that could pass that would have gun stores as non-essential, because they are non-essential. Everybody knows that. It's not essential to have a gun and ammo during COVID. Nobody's coming to your door and busting it down because they don't want to get flu-like symptoms.
Speaking of which, has COVID, Merrill, in your mind, made a federal background check loophole even deadlier?
Absolutely. The fear that people have felt during COVID has opened up the storm waters, the storm gates, for a flood of the gun sales. And these gun sales, having more guns on the streets, means more suicides and more gun violence. That's the way it works when you have more guns. And you have more guns stolen too, because people are not keeping their guns safely. So you have them in the wrong hands.
And locally, how many of those guns have actually been stolen?
I don't have the numbers. I can tell you the stories, but I'm not good with the numbers.
Oh, no worries. How many background checks have actually been run in the past 2 years since COVID?
More background checks than ever before in the history of background checks.
Well, how many of those background checks have actually taken more than, say, 3 business days?
I don't know. And that's a scary thought, isn't it? That's a very scary thought, because if it takes more than 3 business days, then that person can get the gun, just like Dylan Roof did. And he had things in his history that would have precluded him from getting a gun.
What should be precluded from people getting a gun right now?
I think that prior charges of violence, mental illness, that sort of thing should be, stop people from having guns.
And as you know,
sometimes it's just temporary.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be all the time. One of the things that they are doing in the U.S. Senate, there is having a temporary stopgap for people who are, suicidal or may harm themselves or others, to take the guns away, and then they would go back to court when they're well and get their guns back.
And statewide, how many of those temporary stopgaps have happened in many states around the United States?
How many have happened around the United States?
Yes, ma'am. In certain states. Yes, ma'am.
I think many states have the ERPO rules, the laws.
Yes, ma'am. And as you know, during COVID, domestic violence went on the rise during COVID. How does the boyfriend loophole come into that discussion?
The boyfriend loophole came into that discussion because domestic violence went way up during COVID. So that needed to be included into the bill.
Structural inequities, Merrill, have caused an uptick in gun violence.
What kind of inequities?
Yes, ma'am. Structural inequities.
Well, we see that financial inequities are a big play in this. People that don't feel that they have anything left to lose are on the streets, making money how they can, and then getting into problems with other groups of people, and then we have gang violence.
When did the gang violence started here in Charleston?
We've always had it. It just hasn't gotten so big. So it just is proliferated like mad.
Because of COVID?
Because of COVID. I
Now,
guess people with their drugs during COVID. I say
now,
that in
yeah, and this is probably a redundant question, Merrill, but how has COVID highlighted the weaknesses of actually, an uptake in existing gun laws?
Oh, it has shown the lack of gun laws and the need for gun laws, gun prevention laws, because of the numbers, like we had talked about, because of the huge uptick in sales, that we're getting them into the wrong hands too. And that's a huge problem. People like people in Mount Pleasant want to keep all of the school money for their school. Well, that doesn't make sense, because if you don't fund all the schools, then it's going to creep over. Violence is going to creep over into your area. Well, by it has crept throughout the Lowcountry, throughout our state, throughout our country, because of having so many more guns.
How many more guns do you expect to come, say, for here in Charleston County in the next year or so?
It's unmeasurable.
Now, in what way, Merrill, do you reduce the imminent risk of lethality through sensible gun laws and a culture of safety?
I don't even know what that means, Quintin. Can you reword that for me?
Ma'am, in what way do you reduce the imminent risk of lethality through sensible gun laws so that you can have a culture of safety?
We've got to get background checks passed. We really do. Background checks on all guns sold is essential to having us being safer with guns out there. We're not trying to take anyone's guns, and most Republicans and Democrats believe that background checks are the way to go. So I'm not sure why our legislators aren't including that. It seems to me that the gun lobby has more of a hold than the voter does.
Now, how do you actually create that culture of gun safety today?
How do we create a culture of gun safety today?
Now,
we take care of our kids. We train them. We keep them busy. We keep them in school. We have a job system that, when they finish school, that they make a living wage. That's a problem in South Carolina, problem across the country. So, we've got to look at it as a full picture.
Now, okay, in addition to that, what adequate oversight, Merrill, over the marketing and actually sales of gun and ammunition would you like to see?
I would like to see some regulation over the marketing. At Christmas time, there was a gun store that used a little, it looked like a 7-year-old putting a AK-47 model, little toy on the Christmas tree. And they're selling assault weapons to children. They're pink and have little, daisies on them and dolls and stuff, or they're blue and they really are sold for children. They're lighter weight, they're smaller, but they're assault weapons. And getting our children comfortable with guns, I can see, but getting them comfortable with assault weapons is harmful, because no one except for the military should be using these weapons.
Now, have you actually located solutions that would be ideal to engage with responsible gun owners and dealers with this situation?
Well, haven't we already covered that? We want background checks on every gun sold. We want assault weapons off the street. We deal legislatively, we deal legally, and we deal in the community.
Deal in the community.
We get experts. We're not trying to get all the members in the world. We're trying to get the best members. So we have experts in their fields become members, and that's how we move forward.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. What are those underlying contributions, that is, to gun violence?
What are the underlying contributions?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So what are the benefits of gun violence?
Yeah, or contributors, Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure there are benefits to gun violence. I might be misreading your question.
No worries at all. It's all good. Let me ask you this way, from a public health standpoint. How can you recognize, gun violence through these public health solutions?
Well, parents and family members and friends can see when someone is in pain and shouldn't be having a gun, and they can usually go to court and start with the doctor and go to court and get a hold, so that person can't get a gun, or they get the guns removed from them temporarily.
Now, what gun research, Merrill, does the CDC actually support right now?
What gun research?
Yes, ma'am.
CDC is not doing a whole lot right now. That's why we need a leader for the CDC, but the Republicans in the Senate are blocking that. So, we need someone that is supportive of gun violence prevention to be leading the CDC. We tried getting Chapman in, and he was blocked. So we're trying to get somebody to lead the CDC to make it a beneficial organization for us, because it hasn't been for years. It's been defunded.
How much has that organization been defunded?
It's been defunded hugely. It's been basically impotent with Trump.
Okay. And how has that affected your finances for the Brady organization?
Well, I don't get into the Brady finances at all.
Okay.
So, but I would assume that our finances have gone up because of that, because we've had to work harder.
Mm. Well, I would love to talk more with you about this, and I'll get you back later this year. But I have a hard stop. I'm going to run to the next interview. But Merrill Chapman with the Brady Campaign right here in South Carolina as the president. Thank you for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin.
Oh, you're very welcome.